Okay, this is a little overview on this engine here. I've seen this thing for a long time. It's a Hudson reproduction of the pre-war 700E Lionel engine, and I had a chance to get one at what I thought was a good price, so I picked it up. It's got a cast tender with 6-wheel trucks. The engine is for all intents and purposes a good copy of the Lionel pre-war scale Hudson, but looks can be deceiving. Now a lot of the parts on this actually have the 700 part numbers on them, so whatever they used for it may have been some of the tooling. The problem with this thing is the material they used to cast it was just crap. It's so soft, it's horrible. When you're putting screws into the castings, they strip out readily. I had so much problems. The side linkage on the drivers, it just breaks. It's so brittle. I had to replace several of the pieces with later issue parts from the Lionel Hudsons, and I'm waiting for the connecting rods between the drivers to break too. They were so sloppy, I had to bush them on each side. So anyhow, I replaced what had broken. The eccentric crank arms both snapped because they were junk. I went through it. The engine was mounted. The motor was mounted in such a way it was pinched between two plates. It was terrible. It's a permanent magnet motor, so although there's an E unit in here, it works with a rectifier to give it the reversing capabilities, which isn't good or bad. It's just how it is. Now on the original Hudson, the coupling between the electric motor and the gearbox was this rubber piece, kind of looked like a faucet washer with 4 holes in it. Well, the cast drive pieces that work with that crumbled, and the way it was mounted in the chassis, the rubber piece actually hit the frame, really causing some severe binding. The boiler shell, when you clamp it to the chassis, all the drivers hit the boiler shell, so it required some serious clearance in there. There's no way that if somebody got this out of the box it would have ever ran. And the other problems I had with this were and this is not Hudson Reproduction's fault, but the engine itself was most likely designed to run on 072 curves. So I don't have 072 curves on my layout, but I do have 054. And I went through no small pains to get this thing to run on the 054 curves, and I'll show you in a second what I've done to do that. Now what I had to do to get this to run on the 054 curves, first of all, I had to machine down the flange on the center driver, which is common practice on a lot of engines that aren't particularly scale, so that allows the wider wheelbase to negotiate the curves. I had to take the boiler pan here and really enlarge the opening so that it didn't hit the rear set of wheels on the trailing truck. There also was there was another mount back here that just impeded the amount of travel that the truck could do in relation to negotiating the curves. So I removed that, and that solved that problem rather easily. On the front truck, what I had to do is I revised the mount when this piece came originally, right here was a just a stud with a spring in it, and same thing here. So what I did is I shamelessly stole Lionel's engineering of how they mounted the truck on, say, like a 773 or the later 783 semi-scale Hudsons, and I had to also I used wheels that were somewhat smaller that I had in my parts box. These are from the any pilot truck on 90% of the Lionel steam engines. So they're smaller and they provide more clearance, and they work with the 054 curves nicely. So all that was quite a hassle working through it. I tried my best not to alter the train too much, and in fact you could put this back to original if you ever had a mind to, if you wanted to set it up on the shelf. The other thing with that, the coupling between the electric motor and the drivetrain, I had a nice, I had some real old two-rail stuff, and in that was a couple nice actual U-joints. So I adapted those U-joints to work with the motor coupling, and I made a plate. I don't know that you'll be able to see it. You really can't see it. I made a plate to mount the motor that firmly attaches to the frame, not unlike the original Lionel open frame motor was mounted. And with the rigid mounting and the alignment and the universal joint, it worked really good. It's nice and smooth. There's no vibration, and surprisingly, with all the problems I had, it runs quite well. The only other thing I had to do, the links for the tender were too short. I mean, for the scale model, the tender was very close coupled to the engine, so I made a couple new mounting pieces here that were a ½ inch longer. That solved that problem. On the rear of the tender now was a, when it came from the Hudson reproductions, was a scale type coupler that I removed and mounted a pre-war box coupler so that I could couple it to cars I had. I don't have any scale cars. So in about a minute I'll send this around the track. It runs very well, actually, and I was quite happy with how it runs, and it tends to have a pretty good pulling power. So I'll see what you think.